is it going with this within this hard times and these lockdowns and everything like that? How do you feel on a personal level?
Um, I mean, I don't know. It was weird in the beginning with all the lockdowns and you know, our town turned into a ghost town. Everything was closed and all that stuff. I mean, I got used to it after a while because basically my life revolves around either going to work or heading out to the studio, and then either way, I'm basically isolated from reality. So at a personal note, it hasn't really changed my life that much. I mean, if we're going to talk about finances, of course, it's been fucking terrible because everything's canceled. But that goes for me and every other musician in the world. So it's nothing special in my case. But because of the way that I live my life, I guess I got used to that whole isolation thing. But I see other people are struggling a lot with it, so I feel sorry for them, but I mean, I can cope with it, but that doesn't mean I want this to last forever. I mean, I want this to be over too.
It seems it didn't influence your productivity. Last year you had your Spirit of Rebellion album and just a number of EPs, so it's going on well, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of that were all those EPs you're talking about. Those were kind of reissues and things that was in what I refer to as my vault, which was this sort of limitless, hard drives just full of stuff that where it like works in little snapshots or demos, just different versions of songs and remake, all that stuff that really we hadn't really put out. So it was just me catching up on that kind of stuff, and the Spirit of Rebellion album was recorded a little bit before the pandemic hit, so that was just released like a month, I think, or 2 months before the pandemic hit. So I was lucky in that sense, but speaking of productivity, I mean, the fact that there's really, I mean, there's no preparations now for getting ready for tours. There's nothing like that. Everything's on ice. So yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time right now being really productive. I mean, I've created a lot of music since last year, maybe an hour and a half of music. I mean, I don't even know. It's just like different types of projects that I'm involved with now, and and I'm working on, sort of Mortiis stuff, and then like some side projects which are more sort of Berlin School, Tangerine Dream, that kind of stuff. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but so I'm working with Sarah Diva again, for the first time since the Smell of Rain album. But she's recording right now. I think she's over in the UK. So everything's happening on Messenger or the phone or emails, which is a weird way of working. Stuff that should normally take like 5 minutes, if you're in the same room you can explain, takes like 5 days now because you got to do it like on the phone. And so it's weird. That's frustrating, but at the same time, there's a lot of free time now to just work on music and not focusing on anything else. So it's positive, I suppose.
And your latest EP that was issued in January is just like a collection of noises. And what was the idea behind it?
Once again, I have a really broad taste in music, and I'm interested in sound design, and I'm getting old, so I've collected a lot of noises. I've created a lot of different weird sounds, and I sample things all the time. And I just I just store everything on hard drives and everything, and I'll pull it up like years and years later, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting, and I'll create collages, of sound, almost like, I guess, painters will mix with colors. Sometimes I'll just fuck around and I'll mix with noises and different strange sounds, and occasionally something cool comes out of it. And the EP that you referred to, that's quite a long time ago. Once again, I mean, it was something that I had laying around for a long time, and I just figured, like, fuck it, man. I mean, I'll just release it to the public. And it was something I did, I think, in the mornings before I went into the studio to work on the Great Deceiver album a few years back. And my daughter was very young, so there were like certain responsibilities I had in the mornings in terms of making sure that she wouldn't die. Stuff like, with little kids, you have to take responsibility. So I had a couple hours every morning, and I would just sit there and mess around on the computer, creating sounds. And that's actually kind of like, that's the EP that you heard.
Yeah. Is a target audience for this kind of music or samples? How should the listener perceive it?
I don't know. You know what I mean. That's what I pay other people to take care of. It's like I just make the music and the sounds, and I'm not going to worry about what people might think or how do we sell this. I don't work for Coca-Cola. You know what I mean? I just do my thing, and then we'll see what happens. Some of it, like that EP, is incredibly uncommercial. It's uneasy listening. It's not for everybody, but it wasn't really supposed to. It was just like a sidestep. It's just fun for me to do that sometimes. So it's just no real commercial idea behind it. So maybe nobody fucking even heard it. I don't even know. I guess you heard it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And it's interesting because when you did, for example, The Smell of Rain, it sounded almost like pop music, and it was a music for everyone.
Yeah, I guess. I wasn't. The thing about The Smell of Rain was that it was kind of like what I would thinking back at it, which I have done many times, is that it was a bit of a happy accident. Because at the time, I really wanted The Smell of Rain to sound more aggressive than it did. But that was my first ever attempt at making sort of electronic style music, with that kind of, with the more traditional arrangements and things like that, and lead vocals, and all that stuff. And I had a really great sense of melody at the time, and I still do, as a matter of fact. But the truth is, I wanted that album to be more aggressive because I was a lot more frustrated as a person at the time. I was really fucking pissed off with the world. But the album ended up sounding more, as you said, like catchy. It's almost like poppy, and especially like it with the choruses, and very easily sort of sing-along music sometimes, So I was a little frustrated with that when we were done with it. I was very happy with it at the same time, like, fuck, I wanted this to be harder. But we did perform it much more aggressively live, so it translated differently live. But but looking back, I think that's the best thing that could have happened. I think those songs need to sound exactly that way. Mm-hmm. So thank God I didn't know what I was doing.
And as far as I know, The Fragile of Nine Inch Nails played a big role in your career while you were when you were switching to this kind of electronic sound. So, did you aim to sound like Nine Inch Nails at some point of your life?
I think everybody that has ever tried working with samplers and electronic music has tried to sound like Nine Inch Nails, to be honest. Or Skinny Puppy or someone like that, But so I was really inspired, and what always fascinated me with bands like Nine Inch Nails, and even Enigma and Skinny Puppy, as I said, and even stuff like Rob Zombie remixes and things like that, is the fact that they layer sounds in such interesting ways that they become new sounds. So I would always try to figure out how they sonically made things sound the way that they did. That was my whole fascination. That was pretty much the thing that was the most fascinated about, was like, how do you make that drum sound that way? How do you make that synthesizer sound like that? What kind of distortion are you using, And then you just fuck around and experiment on your own. And sometimes you just, maybe you did it this way. That's cool, because you really like the sound and you just want to see if you can recreate that sound. It's just a way of learning, So, obviously after a while, I kind of drifted away from it as I became more certain of myself and how to create my own sonic palette. So then you start drifting away and become yourself again, which, is a good thing. But that for sure, there was a group of Americans, especially, in the sort of 90s industrial boom, that I found very inspiring.
Yeah. And what's your plans for this year? What would you like to achieve in the ideal world?
My plans for this year, well, we're not exactly going to play live. I mean, I'm going to do that thing. I'm going to do a thing with Emperor in a couple of weeks, which is just a couple of songs, just a special guest thing, which I think is interesting. But beyond that, I mean, it's just pretty much stay in the studio and just keep working on music until the world reopens and we can start planning shows again. I mean, it's the only realistic way of thinking right now.
Yeah. And you referred to this dream of Emperor, and do you feel nostalgic about these days you were in the band in some way?
Maybe I did 15 years ago. I mean, it's so long ago now. It's more like a vague memory now than anything. Maybe I'll feel nostalgic. We're going to be rehearsing on Sunday. We're going to get together, like the four of us, for the first time since 1992. So in the same room, so that might bring on some nostalgia, So ask me again next week.
Yeah, and do you still remember how to play bass?
I've been practicing a bit, so I think I can handle it. I mean, who knows? I might fuck everything up. I mean, it's going. The rehearsals are going pretty well. I mean, I practice pretty much every day for like an hour or something like that, and just going through the songs. And for a while I was like, oh shit, I can't do this, But it's more about, I know the songs that I'm going to play. It's more about getting the feel back for how it is to have a bass, tied around your neck and playing it, So it's more of a getting used to the feeling as opposed to remembering songs.
Yeah, I saw Entra a couple of times live, and it seems a bit strange to me. There's differently looking people, differently behaving, but they're still trying to wake up these old spirits and enforce it in some way. So it's a mixed attitude.
People change, they've gone their ways in terms of the kind of visual aspect that they want to, that they're comfortable with, and I've gone my crazy fucking extreme way. I mean, I went from what we did in 1992 to much more extreme, and I've always just gotten stranger and stranger, I guess, with what I've done. But that's just me. I've been like that since I was a kid. I've always been into visual stuff. I mean, I came out of my mother's womb listening to Kiss. So that's just me. Sort of Gene Simmons. The Blood and the Fire, and I love that stuff. And they drifted in different directions. I mean, I did mention, when Simon called me and asked me if I wanted to do it a couple of months ago, and I was like, we should do the old fucking Corpse Paint again, like from the Mini LP. That would have been the greatest fucking thing. I would have loved that. But I don't think they're really comfortable. I mean, they've done their, non-makeup thing now for so long, and I think they feel odd if they were going to sit down and put that stuff back on. I would have loved to see that.
Yeah, and would you?
I can't force them.
And would you put your makeup and all these things and spikes?
The Mortiis or the black metal stuff?
Black metal stuff, yeah.
I would have done it if they did it. Yeah.
Okay.
Why not? I put all kinds of stuff on anyway. Not right now, but when I do like shows and photo shoots and things like that.
Yeah, I think you have a big collection of your stage clothes and all this kind of weird stuff in your room or something like that.
Yeah, not as much as you think. I mean, I have the most recent stuff that I've done, obviously. But to be honest with you, a lot of times when I don't use it anymore, I sell it. Like I have some of these, like what we call like mega fans, and they pay a ton of money. Okay, I'm never going to use it again, because I keep making new stuff. I like to change and evolve, so I'll sell it off. It works for me, and I can buy some new expensive records because I collect records, and I can buy some really expensive stuff, so I'm happy.
Yeah, and what was the longest makeup process in your life?
Maybe I can't remember exactly, but I know, like in the early days of the prosthetic mask, there were some really primitive versions of the Mortiis mask back in the mid 90s. But once I got the really professional one, that which was actually done just outside of Hollywood, like really, fucking movie people designed it for me. It's really expensive. It was a long time ago, and the first few times we put that on, it took so long, and I think I had help, and I think it was like 3 hours. But that was back in the days when we were trying to hide the edges and just make it look real.
Mhm.
Like these days, I don't care. To me, I think it looks cooler now when it just looks like it's been forced upon my face, like it's like a leather face type of thing. It's much more grimy and dirty, and which I like that. That takes me like half an hour. I'll just fucking and put on the rest, and I'm done. So, but yeah, sitting there for 3 hours with the fucking glue and the shit, that's terrible. Or
Yeah, and you were wearing masks until it was a trend.
Mhm.
You started to wear masks until it became a trend.
Yeah, I remember back in like in the 90s, I was when I got signed with ASIC Records or EREC Records, as they're known as. I started getting featured a lot in the British media, like the bigger magazines like Kerrang and Metal Hammer and The Enemy and all those like bigger magazines. And I think a lot of times they thought I was just sort of monkeying after bands like Slipknot, which is like complete bullshit. I mean, I respect Slipknot. I mean, I met a couple of those guys. They're nice people, but I was there doing the same thing as them, like probably even earlier. I just didn't sell like 10 million albums, so that's the difference. So you get the shit. They got all the glory and I got all the shit.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And now all the people around wear masks as well.
There's a lot of that going on now, yeah. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, I think it's cool that people are into the visual end of things, so it adds a layer of atmosphere to the music. So yeah, it's okay, but I guess there's a lot of masks now.
No, I mean not about music, about all this Corona style stuff.
Oh, come on. You let me talk for like 15 minutes and I missed your point. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. You've been talking about your collection of vinyls, and how many of them do you have already?
Yeah, I don't have that many as you would believe. I mean, I know a lot of people that have way more than I do. I have about 3,500, which it's a decent amount of records. A lot of them are very expensive too. But I mean, I know people that has 6,000. There's another guy I know he's got like more than 20,000. But he's probably a millionaire. I think he's like really fucking. I think he's got a lot of fucking money. So I have like periods when I buy a lot of stuff, and then I have periods when I just have to stop because it's kind of it's an addictive thing. It's a bit like a drug, you can get addicted and it'll ruin your life, because you spend all your money on it, and it's quite dangerous.
Yeah, so but do you listen to them actually?
I do, yeah. Most of the time I just kind of search them out on like YouTube or something like that, which is just an easier way for me to listen to those records.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not at home all the time, so it's just more practical that way.
Mm-hmm.
And also my son ruined my my loudspeakers a couple of years ago, so he fucked them up. So I don't actually have a way to play records right now.
Okay, but you still buy them?
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And I read somewhere the most expensive one was of Venom's black metal you bought sometime. Like,
yeah, probably. There's a few of them. I don't know. They're probably. It's gonna be hard to find someone as crazy as I was to pay that kind of money. But I mean, you do have some insane collectors out there, and I'm guessing they're probably valued like 3,000 euros each, or something like that. But I have some Metallica stuff that's really expensive, Slayer bootlegs that are really fucking impossible to find, and might be around the same price range. But also you have to remember, like, those things, they increase in value sometimes. It goes in waves. You know, it's kind of like supply and demand. I mean, one year everybody wants to fucking own a huge Venom collection. Next year nobody cares. So it's a bit like the stock exchange. It goes up and down.
Yeah, but nowadays it's a big thing. I mean, it's in the world more vinyls are selling right now than CDs, so it's more popular.
And for me right now, CD is pretty dead. It's not really selling at all. I mean, when I do live shows, I can see CDs selling, but I also own my own web store and all that stuff. I control all that stuff, so nobody else does that. I mean, I have people handling it for me, but I'm basically the owner, so I see what's going on, and vinyl sales are completely way better than CD. So you got like patches and like little merchandise items. They do well, t-shirts and things like that. They're classics. They always move. CD to me is like it's dead. Cassettes are fucking actually selling more than CD.
Yeah, nowadays, yeah, you need to sell tapes as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've done it for a couple of years. You only do like small press runs, you know. And what I always do is I always license out because I don't have the time to run labels. I can't fucking deal with it. I tried back in the 90s. It's a nightmare. You spend all day trying to get people to pay their bills, you know. It's terrible. So never again. So I license out, you know, and I let other people deal with it. And I try to focus on music as much as I can because that's the one thing I'm good at. Like everything else is just like, I don't know, you know. So it's stick to what you're good at, you know.
Yeah. And what kind of music do you listen to these days?
I haven't listened to anything that much in the last couple of weeks because basically I spend my days here in my studio, and by the time I'm done here, I mean, my ears are fucking bleeding. So I just appreciate the silence after that, you know. But the last couple, I had a friend over. We had some beers a few days ago, and I was playing some music for him because he's fucking ignorant and he needs to learn about good music. So I put on, you know, the American doom band Pentagram, that's like an old-time favorite of mine. I've been into Pentagram since the early 90s, before anybody knew what they were. And there was this really cool band that they had like one album out called The Hand of Doom from Germany, and their record came out in 1979, and it's kind of like a doom band as well, very obscure. They're fucking awesome. So those are the two last things I remember listening to.
Yeah. What would you wish to yourself for this year and to the ones who listen to music?
I think I hope I can remain productive for the rest of the year, because I know I'm not going to do any live shows in 2021 except for the streaming one with Entra. And I guess I just hope for all of us for 2022 to be a sort of the year of reopening, and we can start going out and do shows. And hopefully they will not be the kind of shows where you can only have like 100 people and it's going to be like 5 feet between everybody and the masks, and because those will be very awkward shows. Very strange and distanced, you know. It won't be there will really be very little sense of you know, togetherness, you know, which is what you want on a show, because that's where the energy comes from.